Hummus is arguably the greatest dip of all time, but if there's one dip that's possibly even better, it's muhammara. It's a Syrian roasted red pepper dip, and just like hummus, it's very quick and easy to make, but it's got these bigger, bolder flavors, and it's actually pretty good for you too. So I'm gonna show you how to make it, and then we're gonna taste test both dips alongside my very picky parents to see which dip reigns supreme. When I'm making muhammara, I'd say 90% of the time I am taking the shortcut. I'm using jarred roasted red bell peppers because it makes this dish lightning quick, like 15 minutes or less. All you need to do is drain them and they're ready to use, but do not rinse them because that can water down the dip. Quick pause. I forgot to mention how to make this recipe the more traditional way, which is to roast the red bell peppers yourself. I do have instructions on how to do that in the blog post, which is linked in the description box below. Okay, back to the recipe. I've tried this recipe both ways with jarred peppers and roasting them myself. They both are super delicious. You can't go wrong. It's more just about your priorities. Do you want to save some time? If so, use the jarred peppers. Do you have a little extra time and you want to save a few dollars? Then go ahead and roast them yourself. Next up, we have walnuts, which are a primary ingredient in muhammara, and it is one of the reasons I love this dip so much because walnuts are so good for you. You need 1 cup or 112 grams of walnuts. Preheat a pan over medium heat for a couple minutes and then go ahead and add your walnuts. While these are going, we'll grab our next ingredient, breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs are pretty traditional in muhammara, though there are some variations because this recipe is very popular in Syria as well as Turkey and Lebanon, and so depending on the region you're in, they might use slightly different ingredients. Since breadcrumbs and walnuts are very different size and shape, you want to stir this pretty frequently to prevent anything from burning. And if things are toasting a bit too unevenly, just go ahead and lower the heat. A little panko on my pants, no problem. And you're looking for the walnuts to be a few shades darker and for the panko to be golden brown. Once you see that, take this off the heat so it doesn't keep cooking. Before I add the panko and walnuts into the food processor, I'm going to hold on to a fat garlic clove, and you could just chop this up, but I'm trying to keep this a chop-free recipe, no knives required, so I'm just gonna finely chop it in the food processor. Instant minced garlic. And plop in your walnuts and breadcrumbs as elegantly as you can. Go ahead and blend this until everything is in a fine crumb. All right, this is what you're looking for. Let me show you. And now from here, we're just gonna layer the rest of the ingredients in the food processor, which is what makes this dip so easy and so quick. Slimy. 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. Okay, now it's time for one of my favorite ingredients ever, pomegranate molasses. This is gonna add this mouth-puckering tartness with a little bit of sweetness. I think of it kind of as like a supercharged, more complex vinegar with a really nice viscous texture like honey or molasses. You can buy pomegranate molasses at Middle Eastern grocery stores or online, and I've linked a couple brands I like in the description box below. It's got the perfect balance of tartness and sweetness, and there's so many other uses for it than this dip. Love it so much. I've listed a couple here, and there are several recipes that use it in my cookbook, Big Vegan Flavor, if you want to check those out. To enhance the tartness, we're gonna add just a little bit of lemon juice, 1.5 teaspoons, or whatever I eyeball it today. 1/2 teaspoon of ground cumin, salt, of course, to season, and then some Aleppo pepper. It is a mild chili flake that's a bit fruity and tart in flavor. I'm using 2 teaspoons today, but you can start with 1/2 teaspoon, taste and add more as needed. And then you're just going to blend this up. Actually, you're not gonna blend it, you're gonna use the pulse function repeatedly. Most versions of muhammara have a bit of a chunky, rustic texture. If you prefer something super smooth though, go ahead and just blend continuously. All right, let's give it a taste. Oh, it's sweet, it's tangy, it's a little smoky. Every good flavor is in here. The simplest way to serve this is as a dip, and I like to garnish mine with olive oil, some fresh mint, maybe a couple crushed walnuts and pomegranate seeds, but you could also use this as a sandwich spread or in a wrap. I'm gonna tidy up and then whip up a batch of my homemade hummus and bring both dips over to my parents' house to see if muhammara can claim the crown of best dip ever.
My daughter.
My daughter.
My parents.
She looks like me.
No. She's carbon copy of me.
Your other daughter looks like you.
She doesn't want to look like a man though.
But the color-wise, we are similar.
You have to dress for Valentine's Day.
Oh, we both are matching.
Two hopeless romantics. Okay.
Yes.
Dad, would you describe yourself as a hopeless romantic?
I am not romantic at all. No Indian man is romantic.
Oh, no. I know so many. Believe me.
Do you?
Yeah, not romantic with me. So many of our friends, they are very romantic with their wives.
For those of you who don't know, my parents, this is my dad
Deepak.
and my mom.
Neela.
A few years ago, you might remember I served you my homemade hummus recipe and you said you didn't like hummus, but then you tried the homemade version.
Hummus is not one of my favorite things.
So would you say you like hummus now?
Oh yeah, like this hummus I can eat a lot. Oh yeah, and it made the best recipe in the whole wide world.
So I'm gonna have you try the same homemade hummus today alongside another dip, and I wanna see what you think about both of them.
She didn't tell you to start yet.
Yeah.
I'm just getting ready.
And I'm gonna get your thoughts on which one you like better, but for now you can just have the hummus. Now that you've had the hummus, I'm gonna serve you the second dip. Do you know what this is? Can you tell from looking at it?
From red pepper.
It's from red peppers. Do you know what it's
Or
called?
pimento.
No clue.
It could be because of the sun-dried tomatoes.
So this is muhammara. It's a roasted red pepper and walnut dip, and the sweetness comes from pomegranate molasses. So if you had to pick between these two, which dip do you prefer?
This one?
Each one has its place. The hummus, if you would be, with pita chips. This one could be used with anything. You can put it on a soup.
A soup. So if you had to rank this 1 out of 10, what would you give this versus the hummus?
Oh, hummus is 8, this is 10.
I was almost going to say the same thing.
All right, folks, you heard it here. Muhammara is officially the best dip in the world, at least in our small family. So you can get the full printable recipe for both dips in the description box below. And thank you to my parents for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you, cameraman. My dear son-in-law, Max.
What kind of hat is this, Dad?
Just cheap.
Just cheap.